you deserve amazing blood sugars regardless of the month of the calendar, right? So that would be my insight for you, is really make sure, A, you're paying attention to the weather cooling and if that has any impact on your blood sugar. So the first thing I would do is, if you have a CGM or you have blood sugar data, take a look. Is it running higher than it was, a month ago or 2 months ago? Take a look at that. And then ask yourself, okay, what's changed? Dig just a little bit deeper. And when you think you're like, oh, I went pretty deep, dig just a teeny little bit more. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I went surface level, I figured it out. But there's usually something that's actually a step further that's going to be the bigger breakthrough then.
Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Tzeel. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode.
What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where today we're going to talk about a thing that you may have heard of, you may not have heard of. I've kind of talked about it in passing. And then, of course, everybody's favorite holiday. Can do a little bit about that, and I can always do more in a future episode as well. So that being said, it's definitely fall. We're in the midst of fall. We're in the midst of, pumpkin everything, pumpkin spice everything. And quite frankly, it's an amazing time of year. But what I've seen as a practitioner and as someone who's had this for over 25 years myself, I have seen the trend of blood sugars for many people starting to go up. And it's really easy to fall into this trap if you are not careful. And this does not matter if you have type 1 diabetes, if you have type 2 diabetes. Quite frankly, people without diabetes may even have this, but they just are not aware of it. But blood sugar is starting to trend higher. And there's one possibility that is definitely, you've thought about this a million times. There's another one, might be more under the radar. I'm going to hit the under the radar one first because I feel like that's always the exciting part. But that would be, and goofy as this will sound, it is legit, seasonality change. You might be thinking, well, what do you mean seasonality change? I'm talking about pure, just straight up temperature differences. So you just had the summer, depending on where you are in the United States, Canada, wherever you're listening from, right? No matter where you are likely, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, caveat, Northern Hemisphere means you are likely coming out of, you are now into the fall. What that means is your body got used to 70, 80, 90 degrees every single day. Well, now the temperatures are starting to drop. The days are starting to get shorter. We'll have daylight savings coming up. That'll be a whole nother ballgame we can talk about too. But you're going to notice that with that, there will be some more insulin resistance. And that can come from a host of different things. But you might start to notice what normally, maybe you average 132, and I'm making up all these numbers, but maybe you average 132. And suddenly now you've changed nothing else in your life. But you could be averaging 140, 145, even up to 150 without changing a whole lot of anything, at least consciously not changing a whole lot of anything. So here's what I'm talking about. So first off, your body got used to this hotter temperature. Remember, heat and chemical reactions are friends. Heat usually speeds things up. So because of that, the insulin should work a little bit faster. Physical activity may start to hit a little bit harder. Well, the converse is true as well. When you go from warmer to colder, your body might be thinking, what just happened? Why am I used to 80 degrees and now it's suddenly 50 degrees, then it's suddenly 40 degrees? What is going on? It may start to see that as stress, as duress, as, oh my goodness, something is changing. I don't like this stress. There goes some cortisol, number one. There's your first insulin resistance potential contributor. But then also, not only is it stress, your body's like, the reaction's slowing down, right? The insulin that was moving really quickly is now starting to slow down. It now takes your body longer to warm up if you're going to be active. So suddenly all these things that were helping to keep your blood sugar in a great spot may not be doing the same things that you're used to them doing over the past 3, 4, 5 months, which means your blood sugars are running higher, even though you may have changed absolutely nothing. You may be eating the same, maybe sleeping the same, maybe doing the same physical activity, same routine, same everything, except it got colder outside. And I know that sounds absolutely bananas. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's also absolutely a possibility. And I'm not going to say it impacts every person with diabetes, but it impacts the vast majority of people living with diabetes. And so typically around this time of year, if not slightly earlier, if you're a little bit later, you're probably a tad late to the party. But usually around this time of year is when I suggest to people to really have a good chat with their care team. Usually if you're seeing your endocrinologist, roughly every 3 months, maybe every 6 months, but if you're seeing them every 3 months, try to get something in September, October, for sure October, try to beat all the holiday stuff because you're going to need some sort of adjustment to your medication. Again, I say this as someone who's talking about type 1 and type 2. You are likely going to need some sort of adjustment to your medication regimen from your care team. They're going to have to lead the charge with you on this because that seasonality, that weather change is going to impact your blood sugar. And you're probably not thinking about that because you're just like, oh yeah, I got colder outside. I wear a sweatshirt. Cool. But your body has other ideas. That is a major contributor. Now, remember, this is assuming everything stays the same. But what you also have to think about is the days are getting shorter, right? I think it gets shorter all the way up to late December, right? Right around Christmas. They're getting shorter. The temperature is colder. You have less daylight to potentially go outside and do spontaneous activity, go for a walk with your dog or with your family or whatever. So because of that, there's also a chance that because of the temperature change, because the days are getting shorter, that you are actively being as active, right? So there's a chance that your physical activity as a whole drops, which can mean your body was used to a certain threshold of activity. And we've talked about that before on this podcast, where your body gets used to a certain level of this is what is normal for me. And if it's not normal, why is it not normal? And insulin resistance can hit quickly. So a great example of that, and this doesn't have to do with seasonality, but this has to do with just the concept I'm trying to illustrate, is there was one day, and it was a couple of years ago, where I'm used to hitting, for myself personally, my daily target for steps is a minimum of 7,500. That's just what works for me. My body seems to like it. But the reason I bring this up is because my body knows that is my minimum I'm getting every single day. Am I usually getting more? Yes, but that's not the point here. Point is, I'm used to getting at least 7,500. Well, there was a day, and I don't know what happened, if it was just a lot of sitting, there was a lot of stuff I was working on, whatever it was like 6 p.m. and I was at 1,500 steps. Like, it was absolutely abysmal. Concurrently, my blood sugar was sitting at 225 and it had no signs of going down. I had corrected, I drank water, I did all the things, right? And I realized I have not gotten my normal step count yet today. So, of course, decided to go start walking, started moving that step count up. As I got closer to that 7,500 mark, my number drifted right back into range and started to relax and behave normally again. And I tell you this story, the short anecdote, if you will, just simply it illustrates the impact of what your body is used to for activity and what your body actually gets for activity, and why there are times where your body may say, well, I'm just going to be resisting because I'm not getting what I need. This can go for any time of year, but with the weather change, you might be used to doing a walk every evening. Well, now it's not possible because it's super dark outside and you live off a big, crazy road, right? That could suddenly make a massive impact in your blood sugar. So you have to think about that stuff as well. The other thing, which of course is a little bit more fun, but also going to be a very big reality, probably in the next month-ish, is going to be all of the extra food options. And I'm sure there will be some more talk about that. I know last year I went in big on this, but there's going to be a huge amount of focus and emphasis on the variety of food. And so the upcoming holiday, right? Halloween. And that obviously I can go into in far more depth to make sure you enjoy it as good as possible. But what are you doing on Halloween? You're giving out candy and or getting candy. Candy, right? Not saying candy is a problem by any means. Great way to get a low blood sugar stash going. But chocolate, Reese's. I love me some Reese's, right? Three Musketeers, Snickers, all that stuff. You have all these great candy bars. Well, those ain't going to be the greatest thing for your blood sugar, right? They're going to be fine, but they're going to hit your blood sugar quickly. And if there's more of them around, depending on who you are, depending on your level of self-control, depending on if they're the, huge candy bars or just the fun size ones or whatever, there is a likelihood that if they're around, you are more likely to eat them, especially versus if they're not around because you can't physically have them. And that can lead to increased blood sugars as well. So now you've got multiple things working, quote, against you, right? You've got the weather changing, which in and of itself can cause stress on the body. You've got potentially decrease in physical activity. Maybe you're not even aware of it, but there's a very real possibility of that. And then you've also got the potential of fun food that normally is not there that suddenly is just everywhere. Because once you're in the fall, is synonymous with delicious food and desserts and food that may not be blood sugar friendly if you are not preparing for it properly. So I'm not trying to be like, oh, congrats, you're in fall, everything's terrible. But what I am trying to do is just give you some awareness as to things that, A, you can start thinking about discussing with your care team, whether that's us. Even my team and I are all dietitians. We all have diabetes. We all have exercise backgrounds, and we're obviously here to help support you. Or whether that's your care team at home or your endocrinologist that you just want to have that discussion with, because you're going to have to make adjustments to be able to thrive during this time of year. And that's all I want, is ultimately for you to have amazing blood sugar. That's why I do this show. That's why we have our platform. That's why we help people every single day. So keeping these things in mind, have this conversation with your care team. Even just shoot them over a message in the portal if they've got a portal, right? Hey, I know it's the fall. I'm noticing I'm running a little bit high with my blood sugars. Are there things that I might be able to adjust? And it might even be a thing where, again, this is diabetes agnostic. I don't care if you have type 1 or type 2. This goes for all of it, right? It might be a thing where you realize, hey, I realized my step count just went down. How am I going to fix that? Getting more steps, duh. But how am I going to fit that into my day? How am I going to be more intentional about that habit to ensure that I don't miss a beat and my blood sugars don't start to go higher just because the season changed and the weather changed and some, possibilities of my schedule may not be the same compared to what I'm used to. So it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be this grandiose, massive, holy cow, I just found the most greatest thing. It literally might just be, I'm aware that my activity goes down. How am I going to fix that? And I'm aware there might be crazier food around. How am I going to fit that into my life so I can still enjoy it, but not let it derail my A1C and my blood sugar control? It's that easy. It really doesn't have to be complicated, right? Like, it literally becomes those two things, plus let me reach out to my care team in case I'm running higher, just so I know what to adjust with my medication, whether it's an oral medication for type 2, whether it's my insulin for type 1, right? Either way, you've got a solution to be able to thrive at this time of year, because you should not miss a beat at this time of year. Like, kids at this point are in school. If you have kids, right? The seasons are here. Things are obviously crazy. It's always crazy. That's life, right? There's always going to be something going on that's going to be wild, but it shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. And just because the weather changes doesn't mean that you should deserve to have crazier blood sugars, whether they're up or whether they're down. You deserve amazing blood sugars regardless of the month of the calendar, right? So that would be my insight for you, is really make sure, A, you're paying attention to the weather cooling and if that has any impact on your blood sugar. So the first thing I would do is, if you have a CGM or you have blood sugar data, take a look. Is it running higher than it was, a month ago or 2 months ago? Take a look at that. And then ask yourself, okay, what's changed? Dig just a little bit deeper. And when you think you're like, oh, I went pretty deep, dig just a teeny little bit more. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I went surface level, I figured it out. But there's usually something that's actually a step further that's going to be the bigger breakthrough then. So maybe it's, oh yeah, well, I started moving less. Well, why did you start moving less? Well, because the sun went down a little bit. Okay, so how can I move the exercise up earlier? How can I make it a little easier to fit into my life? So just dig a little bit extra than you feel like you needed to. And then, again, from a food perspective, the things that you did during the summer that kept your blood sugar on a great situation, don't just stop doing them because there's fun food around. Like, they're still the principles that you're following for a reason, right? So make sure that you are looking into those things, saying, okay, I'm still doing what I've been doing. I'm still executing on the plan, but then, hey, there's a little bit extra fun. How can I incorporate that? Because I want to make sure that my weight is steady. Maybe you're on a weight loss goal. I still want to drop weight, but I still want to have, a couple of the fun size, Kit Kat bars or Three Musketeers, or again, whatever it might be. I really like chocolate. I'm a dark chocolate kind of person, but like the dark chocolate Milky Way, amazing. Very underrated. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird like that. I don't know. But regardless, right? How can you fit that in? And there's always a way to fit it in. During times in my life where I've been in a calorie deficit, I have found ways to enjoy my favorite foods, to enjoy delicious food, to enjoy seasonal food. Because at the end of the day, the goal is not to deprive. The goal is to say, hey, how can I achieve this and still enjoy it at the same time? Because part of it, yes, the destination's the main, target, but you have to enjoy the journey too, or you're never going to stick to it. At the risk of me going super philosophical and going down some crazy rabbit hole, I will end it there. But that is your big stuff to note right now. It is definitely fall. It is definitely a changing season. It is definitely a changing of temperatures. So pay attention to those things for your blood sugars, regardless what type of diabetes you have. Talk with your care team. If you don't have a supportive care team, my team and I are here to help support. Like I said before, we've got the beat us. We're dietitians. We get it on a personal and professional level, and we've got exercise background. So reach out on social media. I've got you there at Man of Zeal, or check the show notes. You'll be able to find the link to the website to reach out there as well. And if you've got questions, holler on social media. I will catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.